Hello and welcome to episode number 54 of the Wondrous Stuff Vodcast, broadcast live on Google Hangouts on every weekend. It's the place you'll find news, information and commentary on science, engineering and technology from the past week and beyond, and anything else that interests us from inside our tiny little human brains. As ever, my name is John Gardner, and to help me out on this journey to knowledge, I have my colleagues Richard Smith and Ross Davidson. Say hello, chaps.
Hello, chaps.
Good, jolly good. Right, well, we'll kick straight on with this show, and I'm going to start. Last week, we had a momentous resolution and deal in Paris to do with climate change. Now, this is when 196 countries decided on a way to attempt to curb the increasing rise in temperatures, or the man-made rise in temperatures of the planet. And this temperature rise has been on the go since the Industrial Revolution, essentially. It should have been done a long time ago. There's been various people who've known about this type of rise since the 70s, but the vast mammoth dinosaur-like countries that we've all got here, and we find it very difficult to make decisions on anything, let alone something as momentous as this. Anyway, so the actual pledge and the actual deal is that developed and developing countries, and that was one of the sticking points, because the developing countries, their theory was that all the developed countries have caused all this mess. We should be allowed to pollute equal amounts to get up to where you are. But that kind of didn't work. So it's the development countries. They're required to limit their emissions to levels which would only increase the temperature of the planet a maximum of 2 Celsius, with an aspiration of 1.5 Celsius being the norm. They've got regular reviews to ensure that these commitments can be increased in line with scientific advice, and there's going to be a pot of money to provide poor nations with assistance to cut the emissions, and also to cope with any disasters, climate-related disasters that this might cause. So basically, I haven't got a huge diatribe of what I was going to say. Normally I have a big thing here, but I've got some. Basically got a question to Richard and Ross. Where do we go now? What can you see that any technology or any scientific solution is around that we can help expedite this work? I mean, I've got some options here that we've got now. So we've got biomass energy, where you've got biological matter that you burn. Obviously, that releases carbon dioxide, but the idea behind that is that you either have a heat exchanger, or you burn the biomass to heat up a boiler full of water to create steam, on the steam turbine and make electricity. We've got nuclear, we've got fusion at the moment, and hopefully fission soon. We've got carbon capture and storage, where they basically take the carbon emissions, the CO2 emissions, and feed them down a pipe into the middle of the ground and store them there. We've got, what else? We've got things that make things more efficient, so more efficient buildings, more efficient cars, vehicles with electric, wind energy, geothermal energy, water, so tidal and hydroelectric and that sort of stuff. So is there anything else that we can see that to help us out?
Well, all of the above, I think. I've got a quick question about what's been agreed first. I find it quite interesting that the agreement is to, as is always the case, the agreement is to not allow temperatures to rise by a certain amount. Is that actually what's been agreed, or is it to reduce emissions? Because I find it difficult to sort of. Other things can affect temperature. I mean, obviously, man-made climate change does exist, but do they not have agreements on emissions as well? You know what I mean? It's like the agreement is the outcome rather than reducing the cause. Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's no. As far as I know, as far as I read it, there was no there's no real pointers, or there might have been pointers, but not as part of the actual agreement. There was no definite way of reducing these. The agreement was simply we shall put things in place to make sure that it's capped at 2 Celsius.
Yeah. It always strikes me.
I guess we have all of those options that I said before as ways of trying to reduce it. But I just think it's far too late. I mean, it's not something that I should worry about. It's something that Richard should be worrying about. He's got young children, and I'm going to be long dead before it gets to that stage.
And is China part of this agreement?
China, yeah, 196 countries. So China, Russia, India, Brazil, all of the big polluting companies.
Yeah, that's the
companies,
thing.
Countries.
Countries, yeah.
United States, obviously, they're a big polluter as well.
I mean, like you were saying at the start, it's one of these things where it's been difficult to get the sort of developing countries to sign up because, they may think they haven't had their industrial revolution yet, and it's a bit unfair that we can't just, burn all of our fuel to power our industry or whatever. But it's good that they've actually managed to get them to sign up to it now.
By all accounts, there was on the day, I think it was last Saturday, there were all of these real stoic politicians and negotiators all standing around in the hall, and they were actually they were in tears that they managed to get this. So they'd been putting in so many hours up to that point, always been hitting another brick wall and stuff.
Presumably it's hard enough just to get people to sign up to the principle of that it's actually happening, isn't it? That's the thing.
I think that's the main thing, isn't it? Getting everyone just to agree, even if there aren't any sort of like specific technical approaches agreed, just to get everyone to be thinking along the same lines that something needs to happen is the major.
I think they have all agreed
breakthrough.
Now that there is a man-made impetus to this. It was initiated. Certainly, the rapid change has been initiated by a man-made. Starting in the Industrial Revolution, because that's when it started.
You just wonder about, when you're saying about being too late and stuff, but even if it's not too late, because I sort of have two thoughts about it in terms of I worry about runaway effects. So I worry about that, the whole thing about if you reduce the ice mass to a degree where the sun is then not reflecting as much as it was, and then that then warms the planet further. So you have this runaway effect where the planet is then just warmed by that. But we were very concerned around, when I was in school, around the effects of, all sorts of things, I suppose, that haven't come into fruition, but, ozone gases and things like that. And we haven't really curbed those as much as we should have done, and yet we haven't really seen problems with the ozone that were predicted. So not to say that this couldn't be catastrophic, it could be, but I think always there's technological solutions, isn't there? But you do wonder about it's kind of fairly arbitrarily decided 1.5 or 2 degrees, because if there's a runaway effect, you're not really going to have a lot of control in that. Yeah. You can only control the degree in which you accelerate it, I suppose, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much. I remember when I was at school, and it was always the ozone layer. Now, to be fair to them, they did phase out a lot of refrigerants that had ozone depletion. So they didn't make some effect, and as it happens, it seems to have plateaued off. I don't think it's got any less, but it's certainly not getting any. The hole in the ozone layer is not getting any bigger.
Yeah.
And obviously it changes depending on the time of the year and everything anyway. So that is obviously one thing, and it may be that it is sort of like a lever. All we have to do is a little thing at our end, enough to slow it down at the other end. But equally, if what Richard says comes to fruition, then you ain't going to be able to stop just by knocking down the odd coal-fired.
Well, you might be able to stop it, but you might be too late to stop what's already underway. So you might be able to do something about that in the future with long term, but you might not be able to hit that target of 1.5, depending on how that effect pans out, isn't it? I mean, if that's a year-on-year target, But even that, even if you achieve that year on year, if you add a degree and a half per year, we're still going to run into deep trouble with that, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, but they're saying they're saying the 2 degrees. They're aiming for 1.5. That's the proper, that's the actual thing. But 2 degrees is a safe limit.
Right.
Now I don't know what they mean by the safe limit, because I've looked through all the documentation. I've looked through the United Nations sort of press releases and everything, and I can't find any science behind that safe limit. I don't know how they've come up to this. Presumably they have been had lots of scientific advisors on this.
Well, as long as I remember it be them trying to do this, because they must have tried to get this agreement a few times over the years. But 2 degrees has always been the sort of threshold. Like you say, I don't know where that comes from, but that from the first time I heard about them trying to agree that they had to do something about climate change, 2 degrees was the magic number.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's something to do with it's probably something to do with like polar ice caps and stuff. That if it's 2 degrees, they'll start melting.
If it's above 2 degrees, less than 2 degrees is what they're saying. But then you get, the depressing thing is that it's not the agreement doesn't take effect until 2020. So
certainly we've not paid any attention to it, because I noticed straight after Cameron cut the subsidy to solar immediately after the conference.
Well, it's just what I was going to say, because yes, not only did he do the solar, did he cut all the grants to solar, but there was a huge in the middle of, or at the start of the coalition government, there was a huge amount of money given to projects that were doing carbon capture and storage, British carbon capture, and there was a lot of universities who span off companies to do this research, and were getting very close to putting in proposals of genuine solutions for this. And in the last budget, these were all canned. And I remember I was listening to one of the scientists who was doing all this, and he was apoplectic. He was like, well, "What the hell is happening here? You're saying one thing, we were agreeing to these terms, and yet we're close, And this, I don't think this was ever put forward as a be all and end all. This was basically a way of getting what we have now to reduce its emissions." This carbon capture and storage. It's not, it's not new technology, but it's a way of keeping the old technology to get it cleaner until we have proper new technology to go to. And yet they've just canned all the research on it, so there's no money for this now anymore. And this is bizarre to think this is what's sort of happening in the government. I don't understand.
No.
Perhaps I'm oversimplifying things, but I don't think I am. You would think that there is some sort of joined up thinking somewhere. That
to go back to your question about what we could do, to me it would seem that domestically solar and long term and industrially nuclear. I just can't see how, definitely keep spending research money on the other technologies, but as things exist at the moment, new nuclear technologies for the huge demand, especially for bigger countries than ours, and domestically, because solar is very easy to do, to get whatever 25% renewables, then that would seem to be the way to go. But solar doesn't seem to be able to scale to world scale. So to me, it's still nuclear is the only game in town.
Yeah. I mean, I've said that pretty much all the time. Nuclear is the option in terms of sort of like you mentioned, like efficiency and stuff like that. Obviously, being more efficient with energy is a good thing, but our energy usage is always going to go up. So you need something that's going to provide the levels of energy that we're going to need. Because like I say, energy usage just isn't going to go down. You might be able to be more efficient, but
I mean, you could have like a revolution that gets you a blip. You could have like I don't know, when electrical cars get below the £15,000 mark or whatever, and they become just common. I suppose you could see a blip there, where if that's adopted worldwide in a surprising way over two generations of cars and everyone ends up with electric, I suppose you probably will, once the manufacturing of the batteries is all done, you will see a drop, but it's only going to be temporary, because then the next thing, to make the next technology needs power, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
Well, though, I mean, one of the reasons why, apart from the fact that you were getting a grant to put photovoltaic cells on top of your house, one of the big drivers was the fact that they got significantly cheaper because they were being made in China, and that was, like Richard said, there's some catalyst, and then that was one of the catalysts to get lots of people, because you would hardly ever see solar panels on top of a house, and I can go down my street and I can see 5, 6 with them on. Mm-hmm. And these are not new builds. I know a lot of the new builds, I think there was something written in where new builds had to have these things. But these are old houses, these are 1910 terraced houses with photovoltaics on the top.
But they were a good deal, and then they were a all right deal, and now it's kind of the saying that immediately the estimates are that the industry's going to have to lay off half of its workers. That's how bad the subsidy cut's been. So it's going to lose half its workers, and that tells you it's a cut that really you're not going to see the uptake. You're going to see the uptake virtually slow to a stop now, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. There is one new thing that I found when I was doing a bit of research for this. There is one new technology which was hidden in all of this other stuff, and this is to do with a team of scientists from it's a joint team of scientists from the university, or the Polytechnic University in Lucerne in Switzerland, and Purdue University in the US, and it's a technology that combines solar power with hydrogen production and storage, and they're calling it Hydricity.
Hydricity,
because that's what they need on the PR. So the crux of it, when you look, it looks a perfect thing here, because it says it efficiently generates electricity, but also stores the power without any degradation or loss.
Really?
Yeah.
Without any degradation or loss?
Yeah. So I mean, it's not hugely efficient. It's more efficient than photovoltaics.
Yeah.
Or now. So
which isn't very efficient, is it?
No, I think they're saying it's about 35% efficient. But it's been known about for a while, but it's never been able to be done experimentally until now. This is the first time it's been done experimentally, and so what you have is a solar panel which concentrates the sun's energy to superheat water, and if you superheat something, it refers to the number of degrees a vapor is above boiling point at a particular pressure. So it powers a series of turbines essentially, and some reactors that split water, H2O, into oxygen and hydrogen, and then the hydrogen is stored for subsequent use. So what you have is you have a system which, in sunlight, it uses the photovoltaics, the solar panels, and in night it uses the hydrogen, which is self-generated in the daytime.
Yeah.
So you're less reliant on the storage then. It's cutting down your storage requirement then.
Yeah, but you'll have to store the hydrogen for the purposes of the night. So it's like a big night storage heater.
But I mean, you're not having. Yeah, you're just switching to the other technology rather than relying on batteries then.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, you are.
That's clever.
Yeah. So, and that is now working. So, but again, you're going to be a good few years away to get that into a.
And even then, like I say, there is definitely a split between domestic and industrial, though, because for industrial, you're still going to need something a magnitude or two higher, aren't you? The technologies, even at 95% or whatever the practical limits are going to end up being. It's nowhere near what industry requires, is it?
No, and I think it's just part of a mixture of power generation.
What's CERN got? Has CERN got its own dedicated reactor of some kind then? For the high energies that they need?
It'll have its own power station, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
I'll just have a look, hang on.
So there probably wouldn't be nuclear because that would probably be overkill even for CERN.
Powering CERN.
Cool oil or something.
So CERN's
Probably got a mix actually thinking about it.
1.3 terawatt hours of electricity annually. At peak consumption, usually from May to mid-December, CERN uses 200 megawatts of power. So it's about a third of the amount of energy used to feed Geneva.
Yeah, so yeah.
But it just says it comes from a.
I suppose the challenge for them is just the peak power, isn't it, rather than the amount that they use over a week.
So yeah, so that's that is. It's good news that we're getting somewhere, but the fact that it's not going to start until 2020, and a lot of things can happen between now and then.
Well, I think the countries like ours, it's just a little bit. I know that in the grand scheme of things, it's trivial, and and actually, the cost to run. Somebody was saying the cost to run one of our old nuclear power stations for a week is about the same as the subsidy that's being cut. So we could easily do it. It's just disappointing that we've, money-wise, I know we've got a budget crisis, but how can you lecture developing countries in the meantime, not come and cut your commitment yourself? It's just
so it's a do as I say, not as I do thing. But I mean, we've always done that. UK are very good at that.
You just need to lead by example, don't you?
Yeah, and actually that takes us on to quite well to what Ross's topic is. And your topic is to do with fracking.
Fracking, yeah. So this is another. It's like we can't get rid of. We're like addicted to fossil fuels. Yeah. So this has been in the news recently, so I want to have a quick chat about it. And the reason it's been in the news is because with fracking, I'll talk about what fracking is first. So fracking is basically a method of getting gas from underground, and what they do for fracking, it's short for hydraulic fracturing, and basically what they do is they drill a hole in the ground quite deep, and then drill across, and then in that hole what they do is they pump a high pressure mixture of water and sand and some chemicals into that hole, and what happens is there's tiny fractures in the rock underneath, and these tiny fractures have gas sort of trapped in them, and the high pressure water as it goes in, it basically increases those fractures, sort of makes them bigger, and then that gas can escape, so that comes back up the drill hole.
I've got an image here of what is actually happening.
I was just about to put one up, but thank you.
Oh, you? Oh, you see, you're too slow. All right, I'll not share mine. You can go back to yours.
Okay. I'll put mine on there. There's mine.
All right, yeah. Well,
there we go. So basically, you drill down under the water table into the shale rock, and then across, and where we've got marked here as fissures, these are the tiny cracks. And the water and chemicals go into those fissures, make them bigger, and then the gas can escape.
So that bit is similar to what happens when you get water in a crack and it freezes and it expands.
Expands, yeah. But it's basically under high pressure, so it's pushed down.
As somebody who's only heard about this through normal media news, the two things that seems to be the big stumbling blocks for people now, bearing in mind that they've read the sort of Daily Mail, so they've got a slightly skewed idea about what it is. But from that point of view, it's we're worried about that the chemicals that they're pumping in is going to go into the water course.
Yeah.
And we're worried about the pressure causes earthquakes.
Yeah.
Is there anything about those?
Well, in terms of the first one, it's below the level of the water table, so it shouldn't. In terms of the second one, there is actually evidence that possibly does happen. In this country, for example, there was one in.
Was it Blackpool or somewhere?
It was near It was in Lancashire somewhere. Yeah, that was it. that was in 2011. Basically, there was a company called Quadrilla.
Quadrilla, yeah.
And they had to suspend there's no fracking going on in this country, but there's a sort of testing going on. But they had to suspend after those 2 earthquakes in Lancashire, one of 1.5. Hold on, what do we use these days? It's not whatever the measurement is we use these days. And 2.2 magnitude in the area. And I don't think it was proven, but it was highly probable that was what triggered it. So I think there is a worry about that, and I think in America, fracking is quite a big thing. I think there's something like 500,000 different fracking drilling going on. They obviously have to monitor this and sort of cease operations if there's any tremors or anything like that.
So is in America, I mean, obviously they're doing a lot of this. They are so addicted to oil over there and various carbon-based fuels.
Mm-hmm.
Do they do? Is it the same thing? Are they just getting gas out, or can you get oil out from this using this method?
I think you can get oil as well. I think so. Yeah. I think you can do oil and gas. In America, they reckon they've got enough gas for the next 100 years through this method. And they think they say it generates electricity at half the CO2 emissions of coal. So even though it's still fossil fuel, it's actually less polluting to burn the natural gas than it is to burn the coal.
Right, okay.
But in this country, I mean, the reason it was in the news in this country was because the government had said they would never do fracking under national parks. And now they've said they will.
Now. Yeah.
But it's interesting because obviously one of the, as well as the sort of the things you mentioned about people being worried about the actual environmental effects, people are also saying, oh, we don't want big drill things in national parks. But apparently the actual sort of
the drill head.
The drill head environmental effects of what you'll see is actually quite small. Obviously there'll be a lot when they're preparing it, but once it's running, the drill head's fairly inconspicuous because it's all underground and
so the derrick and the drill head and the nodding donkeys and all those type of things, they're going to be out of the national park, but they're going to push the pressurized water and liquids are going to go under the national park. So
because they go across sort of like it's miles they go across. In that sort of layer.
I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting from a scientific point of view. But I can't help thinking in the week that we closed down the last deep coal mine, that we're just exchanging one crappy bit of old technology with another bit of crappy old fuel. It's not. We're not going to get out of our situation by using different forms of the same thing.
It's just another limited resource, isn't it? It's I suppose it's a short-term solution.
But that pit that closed today, which was in Yorkshire, wasn't it, or was it in Lancashire? Yorkshire, I think it was. That closed this week. It still had 25 years more coal to get out of there, but that was uneconomic, and it just seems weird.
Mm-hmm.
Probably open it back up in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
But it's a financial argument, though, isn't it? Because it's not that you're progressing towards. It's not that you're progressing towards cleaner technologies as such. It's just that you're running out of the economic ways of getting out the old stuff. And if you don't then start doing fracking, you become more reliant on Russian gas imports, don't you? So, so it's to reduce our reliance on imports.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the financial argument. So, Britain's always going to, to remain financially viable, but always going to need to do that. But we're prepared to take all these risks on just to achieve that.
But I mean, financially viable for what? I mean, we're clearly not we're not a mass producer of anything really now, apart from.
No, but I mean, like for every 1% of energy that you don't get from this method, you need to import from Russia and wherever.
But they're still saying that importing gas in is still going to be cheaper than any method that we've got to bring it out.
Yeah, but it's not just the current price, is it? It's the reliance on it. So it's the fact that we could fall out with the Russians, like over the Turkey thing. We could take Turkey's side, fall out with the Russians, and the Russians could just instantly drive the price up, and or fall out with Saudi Arabia or whoever, and the price goes up, and we're just at the whim of that. Whereas if we have other methods, it reduces our reliance, doesn't it?
But I mean, how we still have North Sea gas.
Yeah.
I don't know how many years are left of that.
Goes down, that's a full stream of energy that's now gone.
Yeah.
And the North Sea gas is also doesn't have too long left, does it? So it's just you want your energy mix to be one where politically there's stuff that you can just rely on yourself to get, I guess.
Let me just share another picture. This picture here is a map of. This shows you sort of where the areas that have been identified in the UK, which actually have these energy reserves, and where's been licensed as well. So that there are licensed areas of fracking. It's not started on an industrial scale or anything yet.
It does seem to be
it is licensed.
It does seem to be a hell of a lot under the North Yorkshire or the Yorkshire Dales National Park, the North York Moors National Park.
Well, this is the thing. The map on the right here shows the national parks. So this is obviously why they've now said they've done the U-turn and said they can do it in the national parks, because that's where most of the reserves are.
Is that genuinely where it is, or is some of that they're not looking if there's a city already on? I suppose there's a lot under Manchester there, isn't there?
I mean, I suppose
you can't if it's very urbanised. Clearly, you can't go there either.
I don't know if this is like a complete, or if this is just the current known. Yeah. So is it that it's easier for them to go and test in the national park?
It does say identified shale gas areas.
Yeah.
I suppose they probably don't bother even looking under central London, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because things would, even if you found some, things would just collapse.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting from a purely technological point of view.
I mean, could our strategy not end up being that it's not the energy store is not going to go away, so we let other countries run the risk of, we put off doing it, we let other countries run the risk, and then once it's 15 years into development, you can make a more assured guess, can't you?
Once we can do it without causing earthquakes or pumping millions of gallons of water into the ground.
25 year first, and they don't have any incidents, then you say, well, actually this is safe because this country's done it for 25 years, rather than trying to pioneer it. Just seems.
Well, I mean, I wonder how long it's been going on in America, because they've got 500,000. I think that the sort of technology's from like 50s or something, or 60s. I don't think it's a new method.
It's scale, though, isn't it? It's
scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a shame, like kind of John's alluding to, it's just a shame that we want to be pioneering in something that should surely be beyond us, you know what I mean? We should be forgetting about that kind of stuff now, but I've got a feeling that probably if I understood the numbers a bit better, that there would be a decent case for it.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure there is, but the thing is, right, it's inevitable that if you're going to put money into things, if you put money into grants, you get an entire area around that, an area of intelligence and an area of industry around that area. It's what happened with solar. With the put grants, a whole industry came up around it. So, why aren't we going? I don't know. We'll go fission then. Why aren't we putting loads of money for researching into fission?
Well, presumably even that's a bit of game theory, isn't it? That if you put all your money into that, there's no way you can, once it's done, everyone's going to know about it, aren't they? So it's kind of a bit like you put taxpayers' money into something, why not let the French do it and then just jump on it after they've done it?
Yeah, get someone else to make the outlay and then take the technology.
Because it's dangerous, isn't it, to invest heavily in something that may or may not come off for you when it's taxpayers' money.
Okay then. We'll just harness the sun's fission and that's we're sorted.
That'll be good. Well, we were doing that. That's what solar panels are, and then we've ended up bloody cutting the subsidy by 50%.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess to sum up all of that, we're trying to put a positive spin on it. We're screwed, hey! But hopefully we'll get something out of this climate deal, because quite frankly, it's just another deal on another deal and another deal, and I don't know how we're going to police all of this, and I don't know.
What's the thoughts behind it? Things not coming into effect till 2020.
I don't know. It's well, that's what happens in these deals, because they'll say, "Oh well, we've got time to put our our ducks in order." Kind of were mixing.
Well, presumably it's what you were saying earlier, is it not? Is it not that the headline is 1.5s to target, and then it's going to take that long to get the detail of how we're actually going to do it?
I guess so.
And then
I guess it
implement
is. I guess it is. But all major United Nations things take a hell of a long time to actually get into. It's like a huge cranking up the big machine. So I don't know what we're going to do. I mean, it's 2016. I suppose it's only like 5 years or something. 4 or 5 years.
And I bet coordinating that number of countries to do something is not that easy.
Yeah. And and quite Anyway, I hope a positive things come out of it. But we'll see, no doubt. Right, and finally for this evening, we have Richard's topic, and Richard is going to talk about painkillers, of which I have various.
You have some.
I have.
Oh, is that what they are?
Painkillers.
All different ones.
Look at the wall.
Well, I can tell you the difference between those different ones to start off with, if you like. There's 2 stories in the news, but I'll just talk a little bit about background around painkillers first. So, painkillers are distinct from anesthetics, which eliminate sensation. So you're familiar with those. So, analgesics, painkillers, act on the nervous system. So you've got paracetamol, which even now we don't really understand how that works. It appears to act centrally in the brain, but we don't really know.
We don't know how it works.
Yeah, we don't really know how paracetamol works. We just know what it does. Does a decent job. Then you have the non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs, which is aspirin and ibuprofen and stuff, which basically leads to a decrease in production of prostaglandin, so that reduces pain and inflammation. There's an offshoot of those drugs called COX-2 inhibitors, which are more specific and block a specific enzyme, but they've been found to increase the risk of cardiovascular events by quite a big margin, 40% on average, so they've been largely discontinued. And then finally, the rough sort of 3rd or 4th branch is the opiates, so morphine.
I don't have any packets of them.
You don't have any packets of them. And they influence the cerebral opioid receptor system. So even with those, which have the bad reputation, which we're going to get into with one of my stories, even with those, when they're used appropriately, the medical opinion, the scientific opinion, is that they're safe and effective. But the problems that you encounter with them is addiction, somewhat to do with tolerance. So the more you use them, the more tolerant you become to them. So if you suffer chronic pain, you have to be very careful, because you need to increase the dosage to get the same efficacy out of them. And overdose, especially with tolerance going up, you have to be very careful then that you don't have a adverse reaction that makes you very ill or kills you. So there's ways to treat that in the correct setting. So you can use rotation therapy, where you switch between as they call them, cross-tolerant opiates. So you can have where basically you're not building up the amount of one strand. You just switch to another strand and you still get the effect, and then the tolerance somewhat wears off, and then you switch back again. So that can be done, but it's difficult to get all of that right every time. So that leads us on to one of the stories, which is fatal drug overdoses hits a record high in the US. So that's this week. The research has come in by the Center for Disease Control. they've said in 2014 more people have now died in North America or in United States of America from drug overdoses than car accidents for the first time.
Is that accidental and deliberate?
Deliberate?
Well, deliberate drug overdoses compared to
suicide.
accidental.
Yeah, I don't think they're even a significant, statistically significant. To be honest, I think
Right.
vast majority of them are either. So basically, these are opiate deaths. So they're mostly painkillers, but also morphine, heroines in that branch as well. So that's quite a big number.
More than car accidents.
Yeah, and
That's mad.
the USA doesn't really have a very good record on those either.
No.
So this is now 47,000 deaths per year up, which is 7% up on the previous year. So 61% of all deaths from overdose involved some kind of opioid pain reliever or heroin. So that's, just to put that into some context, it's 15 people per 100,000 nationwide in the US are dying per year from drug overdose, which seems terrifyingly high.
Yeah.
And in West Virginia, which is where they have the worst problem with this, the overdose rate was 35 per 100,000. So in raw numbers, that's 500,000 Americans died from drug overdoses in the last 14 years. That's the scale of the problem we're having.
What's the statistics for the UK? Do we have
those? This was just a report in the US. I don't think we don't have anywhere near the problem they're going through with opiates at the moment, and I don't think we really have an opiate problem here by anything near their scale.
So the country that has a huge opiate problem also has a huge gun problem.
Yeah.
They
have a few problems over there. Just on the climate, we're talking about their problems on the climate change issue. It's interesting that they're the only developed nation that still have a major party that denies the issue. They are a complex country with a lot of problems. So,
interesting.
What do you make of that? I mean, 500,000 Americans have died of drug overdose from the year 2000 till now.
It is quite scary, like.
It's just
it seems a lot, but we don't have a ratio of any. Do we have ratios of other countries?
No, but I think it's safe to say that it's nothing close to that. I'll try and dig those out for maybe a follow-up episode, but certainly they're going through. I mean, just to see that they're 7% up in a year tells you that the problem's getting worse.
Okay, I'm going to throw this one out. I have no clue whether this is anything to do with it, but we all know that their healthcare plan, up until the point where Obama's trying to put his NHS-like system in place, their healthcare plan is you pay for pretty much everything that you get in a hospital. I'm just wondering if a lot of that is people trying to self-medicate to save themselves money to go into hospital.
Possibly.
I mean, if you think, oh, I'm in pain, I can't afford doctor's fees, can I self-medicate? And not knowing the outcome, not being particularly good at dosage.
Yeah.
I don't know. Possibly,
or maybe people turn into, and we covered this topic about, is there too many prescription drugs? The point that Ross made about, are people turning to them too easily? I don't know. I don't know what the cause is, but certainly they've got a big problem on their hands.
Definitely.
And the other story on this was the Nurofen story, which Ross and I were talking about on Friday night. But in Australia, basically the tablets of the Nurofen tablets have been labelled to imply that they come in different formulations, so that so you can see there migraine, pain, tension headaches. There's a one about foot pain specifically, even something as granular as that.
So the ones here are, there's migraine pain, there's tension headache, there's a period pain one. I don't know what the third one.
And as you can see, it's also saying that that it's fast targeted relief. So it's the targeted part that seems to be the bone of contention.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about it on Friday, if I remember correctly, 'cause we were drinking at the time. It was the targeted bit that's basically misleading. But then
Because basically, because that's not the way that it works.
Exactly, yeah.
You
But the other
can't-
thing,
It's not that. It's the fact that irrespective of what it says, the same pill is inside all the boxes.
yeah. And we were talking about this, and one of the things I find interesting is, as long as they're all the same price, does it matter?
But that was the thing. The thing was the reason why they got charged is because they were selling it at different prices.
Ah, right, okay. In that case, yeah, because I mean, I was assuming that, you know, I fall for this. If my wife tells me to go and get her something because she's got a headache, I'll go for the one that says headache on it, even though I pretty much know that they're all the same. But if they're the same price, it wouldn't bother me. But yeah, if they're charging different prices for exactly the same product,
Well, the
that's
only
obviously
difference,
then driven by the fact that this one sells more, we'll put the price up on it.
the only difference you'll get is what I said in the introduction, which is that obviously there's drugs that are better at swelling. So if you've got swelling related problems or tissue damage problems, or the pain's originating in tissue, you would be better with those type of drugs.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got issues where it's your perception of pain, then obviously the paracetamol would be the better choice.
Do you know
So in
how
terms-
to work out what you're actually getting and whether it's the same as something else at a higher price?
Well, I think within the category of drugs, it just comes down to strength. So you wouldn't really get more targeted for headache and migraine.
But basically, if you want,
better.
I think the thing is, well, if you're going for a branded product and you're looking for a cheaper version and you want to know they're exactly the same, you're looking for this on it, which is let me go. There's a PL there, a PL which is the product license holder. That number there that I've highlighted in green, if that's the same, it's the same constituent ingredients.
Yeah.
So if you look for that on an unbranded product or one that's on a branded product, you might be able to save like £4.
Yeah.
It'll do an identical job because it has to because of that number.
Yeah. And obviously you can get additives with it, which would make something more effective for migraine, for instance. So caffeine.
Yeah.
Caffeine seems to be better for migraine because it dilates the blood vessels in the brain, which seems to help with relieve migraine symptoms. So there is other active ingredients you can put in, but in terms of the painkiller itself, it's going to be identical.
Yeah. Which is why you can pick up some aspirin for like 40-50 pence. You can pick up an Anadin for £2. It is identical. It will not do any more or any less. They are both the same.
So what's the outcome of the Nurofen thing? Is Nurofen a brand? Who owns Nurofen?
Well, in Australia,
Benckiser.
Are they fighting this or
British company?
Yeah, they've been ordered to stop misleading its customers, which has led to this whole, because the Australian government came out quite strong on it, so it's damaged them basically.
Mm-hmm. So have they acknowledged and admitted? Oh yeah, it's all identical, or are they sort of just
they've been ordered to stop misleading their customers? So it's about as strong line as a government would take in this issue. So they haven't been able to argue the point, and I don't think they've tried because they've been caught red-handed, haven't they?
Yeah, it'd be quite interesting to see if it does change sort of the, like you say, all the different coloured boxes that are just the same thing, whether they'll just become more generic.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say when I was going to do this story today, so I went into our local supermarket yesterday and I tried to find all of these things, and I tried to match up the product license holders numbers with the packs to see, and to be honest, they seem to have cleared a lot of the shelves of those distinctive packages. The ones that were there were completely different Nurofens. There was one in a liquid form, there was one in a tablet form, there was one, XXX, but they were all distinctly different. One had had some caffeine in and some aspirin in, and one had something. They weren't. You couldn't compare them because I was gonna buy like four of them with all the same, show them the same product license code, and so they're all the same. But I couldn't do that because it's already started having an effect over in here.
Because it's all the same thing, it's fairly simple for them to just start putting the tablets in one packet. I would have thought. They don't have to sort of throw away the actual product because the product's identical.
Yeah.
Just repackage them.
Although saying that, I don't know. What you get in the little silver foil caplet things, they might be printed on the back as well.
Might be, I suppose, yeah.
Well, there's still be able to brand different product because they'll still be able to have the migraine one which has caffeine in and the whatever one with whatever in, so that you can. But I should just say, in terms of the company behind it, it's interesting that the Guardian and the Independent both wrote pieces in defence of the company. I suppose probably because it's British, but also because actually they partnered with Save the Children earlier this year, which is a programme that tries to prevent deaths from diarrhea, which is not a very glamorous issue, but is a massive cause of deaths in the developing world. So they do some really good work, which they don't have to do, which is very much behind the scenes, and they don't make a big deal out of. Like I say, they don't pick sort of glamorous headline-grabbing charities, but they pick ones that really do make a difference. And the Independent ran an article basically saying this is nothing unique to this company and to RB, and it's done. It's just an industry standard thing to do. So you know, they deserve to be called out on it, but at the same time, they're not unique in doing that.
Right, excellent. Well, that brings us lovely to the end of the show. Has anybody got anything else to say? No. Silence.
No, actually, one thing I just probably worth mentioning. Did you see? You know that company that bought that drug that treated it was like an HIV treatment or something, and that young CEO, he raised the price by 5,000% or something. He got arrested recently.
Yes, I just saw that before I came on air. Actually, he was been handcuffed.
It was the FBI as well arrested him, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't actually follow exactly what he was arrested for, but I just saw the people on Reddit who were like going, "Ha!" because he's not a popular person.
No, because he did it with the second drug after that as well, didn't he? He was involved twice. Well, hopefully it's on extortion.
Probably be on some.
Well, it's going to have to be something federal for the FBI to be involved. So there must
be some sort of accountancy thing. I wouldn't have thought it was anything to do with that.
Yeah.
Probably corrupt. Sick it to the man.
Yeah, it's probably tax related.
Probably. Right. Anyway, so that is episode 54 over and done with for another week. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've enjoyed making it. A couple of things before we go. There won't be one between Christmas and New Year. So the next exciting episode 55, will be on the Sunday the 3rd. I think we said. 3rd of January 2016. Keep listening to us if you've got a pure radio. Keep watching us on YouTube. What would be really great is if you could subscribe to the YouTube channel, just to show that you are interested in what we're doing. We've got our normal methods. We've got Twitter, we've got email, which is wonderofstuff@gmail.com, and of course we've got our new domain name of wonderofstuff.com. Have a look and drop us some feedback. That would be brilliant. So until then, have a great Christmas, good New Year. Don't forget the Royal Institutions lectures are on between Christmas and New Year if you're in the UK. And until then, until the 3rd, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.